Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got a full house with me. Welcome back.
Good evening.
And Gio.
What is good, everyone?
On today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing match week 7 of the Premier League season. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @houseo_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. All right, so let's start off with the action that took place on the day of recording. Gio, we're going to skip off the team that you support and talk about maybe something that might be more fascinating to you. And that's, of course, a Spurs downfall. Spurs against Brighton took place today. Spurs went up 2-0, and then were pegged back and eventually lost the game 3-2. So to start off on a front foot for you, give us your overall takes on this game.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved it because it's exactly what we kind of called for, and that was a lot of goals, a lot of open play, a lot of counterattack, which again we love to see because sometimes I think football gets that stigma of, oh, it's boring because there's not a lot of action. There's plenty of action in football, but yeah, no, I think Ben Johnson's been playing very well. And again, he showed by scoring another goal this game. And then James Maddison obviously slotted another one in, which obviously brought Spurs goal total to 2, going into the second half. And then, the downfall began. I think they just got very complacent. I think they got, they often say that a 2-goal lead is the most dangerous lead in sports, because, you think it's done and dusted, but you start to panic because it's 2-1, only a 1-goal deficit. Is it going to be a draw? Kind of play a little bit more wary. And then once the tie happens, it's, oh no, we fumbled the game because we had a 2-goal lead. And that's exactly what happened here. And I think the key thing here is that Brighton didn't turn it off, knowing that they were down 2-0. They still took their chances. They still were still putting that pressure on that Spurs back line. Kept them very honest and showed and proved to a lot of teams in the Premier League that, this back line does have a lot of holes, does have a lot of weaknesses because they play such a high line because of Postecoglou, that this team is very beatable and you will get your chances. It's a matter of putting those chances away.
Yeah, I have to go back to sort of the game, the selection for Ange Postecoglou. Of course, Timo Werner started on the left rather than Heung-min Son, who's injured. Werner had a chance, though it was called back because it was an offside. He had a chance where the cross came over and he very unconvincingly put a header towards net when if it was... I don't mean to disrespect him, but I think if it was anyone else other than him, that should be something that is converted at that point. Ultimately, it didn't matter. And credit to Tottenham and Brendan Johnson, as you highlighted, I think that's his 6th goal in 6 games. So he's in red-hot form. James Maddison making it 2-0. And really, it looked like Spurs were beating Brighton at their own game. Now, what you mentioned very much so, Gio, was Brighton still didn't shy away from their type of play style and really came back at Spurs in the second half. Goals from Danny Welbeck, Jorginho Rutter, and Yakuma Mente. Big shout out to Mente and Jorginho Rutter, who have been playing quite well. Jorginho Rutter making his transfer from, I believe it was Leeds in the summer. And of course, Danny Welbeck starting the season off quite well. So got to give him a big shout out there. I guess a tale of two halves, Mac. All Spurs kind of in the first half, but then definitely in the second half. Apart from a couple of chances, maybe the Destiny Udogie right-footed shot late in the second half to make it a little bit of a scramble. It was all Brighton's to win, and they did in the second half. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts were initially when you first brought up that question to Gio, I think you gave the answer of what really happened in the second half. As you said, that Spurs were pegged back. They were just that, pegged. They were absolutely done over in that game, in that second half, by the turn of kind of the two halves. And this is the 10th time that Tottenham have lost a Premier League game in which they've led by 2 or more goals. The first club to hit double figures for this, and at least 3 more than any other side in the history of the competition. So this is what Spurs do. They get a good lead. Everything is great. Everything is happy. And then they fumble the bag, right? And it's ever more heir apparent and more noticeable and kind of shines more brightly under this new system with Ange Postecoglou. With it's more high octane. It is going to kind of have more highs and lows. There is going to be a whole lot more volatility in the style that they play. It's baked into it. And it really was, for me, the difference between the two halves was them taking their chances and who could take more of them, because the teams, I would say, equally presented enough to each other. It wasn't as if, I would say, even in the second half, Brighton, yes, they scored 3 goals, but Spurs still had their chances. They just kind of fumbled their passes in the final third. They couldn't connect to be able to kind of score that next goal to put the game away. And in the first half, same thing. Brighton had their chances as well. It wasn't if Spurs completely dominated them. So it was set up as we previewed this matchup, exactly how it played out. It was just, unfortunately, Spurs on their day didn't take enough of their chances as was needed. Even when you look at kind of the possession stats, it played out exactly as what we would anticipate as well. Spurs had, I think, about 60% possession to Brighton's 40%, which is not stereotypical to a Brighton team, but very stereotypical to a Spurs team. When you look at where their possession was held, majority of the possession for Spurs was held along their back 4. So their problem was in the second half, especially, is getting in behind that Brighton defense, which in the first half was kind of rolling out the red carpet for them. So a lot of things that we anticipated. Not too surprised how it happens, considering that's it's Spurs again. It's just, for me, if I had a Spurs fan in my life, which I want to be clear, I do not, I wouldn't know how to console them, because it's set up. It's set up to be like this. It's kind of like the double-edged sword of the style of play. You're going to have a game like you had against Manchester United, but you're going to have a game like this. It's just what's going to happen with this team.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess maybe putting you in a tough situation here, Joe. Spurs currently 9th in the Premier League table, 14 goals for, 8 against. Did come off of 2 good wins in the Premier League previous to this loss. It looks like they're not really going to change their style of play under Ange, and it kind of reminds me of Liverpool before Jurgen Klopp got in, and I guess kind of Alisson Becker, Virgil van Dijk, and Joe Matip to a certain extent shored up that defense and sort of cemented themselves as one of the top pairings of defensive pairings in the Premier League. Is this sort of what Spurs should be aiming for, to bring in better players, to sort of make it so that the quality of play, regardless of what the style of play, the quality of players brings them up to that next step? Or do you think maybe if Ange is not able to make that next step forward, is that something that Spurs fans should be concerned about? Because it looks like he won't change, and it's really a matter of fact of, will the players really step up to sort of make that change? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's more so making the change. I think, again, the players are following, Ange's orders in terms of how we want to play, and he's obviously brought in a few players that thinks will fit the system. Now, the thing about this system is everybody is very offensively minded. Their intentions are to do as little defending, because you're always putting the pressure on their defense in order to win the ball back, to get these opportunities, whether it be in the middle of the pitch or the defensive end. Yes, there is some defense being played, but not a whole lot of it. Now, if they need to shore up their defense and kind of play in a different way to be more compact in order to, not concede as many goals, then granted, this Spurs team isn't going to be scoring a lot of goals. So these wins are going to be a lot harder to come by. Yes, you win, but at what cost? Yes, you lose, but also at what cost? Because this, like Max said, this type of play style will get you wins like this against a Manchester United, but also get you losses like this against a Brighton. So it's a lesser of two, which is the lesser of two evils. You obviously want wins, but you're going to be in that middle of the pack because you're losing as many games as you are winning, and that definitely doesn't help your goal differential by much.
That's a great way to put it because, of course, Spurs line up with the midfield three of Rodrigo Bentancur, who on his day is a good holding midfielder. But next to him, you have James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski, who, come on, let's be honest, they're not really thinking defense first. And of course, we have Brennan Johnson, Solanke, and Timo Werner in front of them. So it's not really going to be defensive. So I guess same question to you, Mac. Should Spurs fans, I guess, just be happy because they are seeing exciting football week in, week out? Or if we look at it realistically, the personnel that they do have, they should be aspiring to be knocking on the door of the Champions League spots. I know it's a tough question, but just wanted to bring that up because of their position on the table right now.
So I think as of right now, considering where they are, considering the teams that they've played, I wouldn't be too stressed in this individual moment if I am a Spurs fan. You're still missing Son, and if you put Son in for Timo Werner, you probably beat Manchester United by a couple more goals, and you probably win this game in the first half in all actuality, right? Because there were a couple of moments, I think Brennan Johnson could have had it happen if Timo Werner played a pass correctly to him. He himself had a couple opportunities where he could have easily scored, and if a player like Heung-min Son is on the pitch, there is probably that separation. I think it's going to be interesting, and the reason why I like that you brought up their midfield is where, for me, their third goal is the problem. Where the first two goals, I understand that can happen because it's very much like water beats fire in Pokemon. It's just naturally super effective in terms of the same style that Brighton play against, where they're fast-paced wingers, their ability to take players one-on-one, how they want to absorb pressure and hit in transition. And to play against Spurs, the best ways that you can score against them more recently is in transition and from set pieces. The last goal, which Bentancur, if you recall, he was trying to shoot the ball out, but then I forgot who just came in and swung at it instead, lifted it up to be able to kind of put Brighton, I think, at that point in the lead. So for me, that is just an individual stake because Bentancur, his whole entire career was playing in a double pivot where he's more of to kind of use, let's say, a past Spurs combination where he was a Luka Modric while someone else was a Scott Parker beside him. So he was never in that position, right? But now he is Scott Parker by himself because he ain't getting help from the guys beside him in the defensive third. But it creates so many opportunities on the offensive third, you're willing to take that risk. But my question would be is long-term, I think they shouldn't be too stressed because Son is still to come back. But for me, the question they should be asking themselves is Bentancur the long-term solution if they're going to play with 1-6 in the midfield? Because for me, that's not, even though he's great in possession, I think you want a little bit more of a destroyer in there as well. That's just comfortable. That is maybe the most expensive type of player in world football other than a striker, maybe. Most difficult player to find, probably. But it relies so much on in the system that they're playing. So not too stressed right now. They still have a shot to get in European spots, and it's a long season.
It is a long season. We're going to then switch our focus to a team in Manchester United, Mac, that did not play with a recognizable six, even though they do have one starting on the bench in Manuel Ugarte. Manu started with Kobe Mainu and Christian Eriksen, got the 0-0 tie in this game, which I think it's not the worst result in the world, considering what sort of has been happening behind the scenes, and also more recently with the results here. Mac, this of course extends the or at least we think on day of recording on Sunday that this extends Erik ten Hag's tenure at Man U, which I know Gio might have some words, but let's hear it from you first, Mac. Overall takes on the game and what this result means for Man U.
So there's two different ways I want to go about it. And it was very clear to me as listening to Dimitar Berbatov, he was in the post-match analysis talking about where it feels weird for Manchester United to celebrate a tie against Aston Villa, right? Where but it's, do you kind of grade them on the curve, or do you grade them where they currently stand? For me, I'm more of the latter, where they currently stand. I think this is a decent result. Aston Villa are a great team in this moment, and Manchester United, to be frank, are not. So for the fact they were playing away, managed to pick a point, that's a solid performance. And the way that the game went about and kind of how mucky and grimy it got, to kind of illustrate that, this was the lowest expected goals game thus far this season at 1.05, and that's lowest in the Premier League since Arsenal won 1-0 against Manchester City last year at the Emirates. So that was October in 2023. So that just shows that was a muck of a game and boring a hell of a game for unless you're a sicko like us. But this one felt even more mucky and horrible because it wasn't if it was, oh, we saw two tacticians out there trying to, outmath each other, trying to figure out different ways to be able to break down the opposition. It was literally put the ball in the middle. It felt like the whole pitch was made out of mud, and we'll see if we can get behind each other's back fours, but it never worked out. So for me, on that way, I do come up with a little bit of dirty taste for both of these teams because there was never a real moment of quality, it felt like. I think that was on both of them. But based off what we've talked about and how we even previewed and positioned this game, that is a success for Manchester United. Does this mean long-term this is a solution to what's going on? No, because you started with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire in defense. That's probably not going to be the long-term solution for Erik ten Hag or any future Manchester United manager. But at least as of right now, if we would have put this in like medical terms, the patient is dead. He's on life support, but he's not dead yet.
Yeah, that's a great analogy for putting it. The question for you as well, Gio, then is, as a Man U fan, this means not the greatest result, but in the grand scheme of things, it's at least not a loss against a very good team in the Premier League this season in Aston Villa. It does feel like though both teams were evidently in action midweek. They had to be in action this weekend, and of course we have an international break coming up. So both teams kind of look like, and both sets of players. You highlighted Garnacho and maybe even Marcus Rashford in need of a break, and much needed. So how do you see this result being on both the Aston Villa side and the Man U side, and what this break could mean for, I guess, Man U and Erik ten Hag, of course, because we expect him to probably stay. What are your thoughts?
Obviously, let's address the elephant in the room. Ten Hag has to stay for the time being. Obviously, no loss means he's in the clear for now. And then obviously a great time to be in the clear because it's back to the drawing board. And in terms of the performance, I thought both teams were equally as bad. I thought Villa, much like Man U does, played to the level of their opposition. I don't think they were the Villa that we're used to seeing mid last week, where they're in the Champions League, where they were competing against Bayern Munich. But hey, see it as you may. I think Man U are going to take this as a positive, although, like Berbatov said, it's strange seeing Man U just celebrating a draw, but, different times, different vibes, and it is what it is. They're stuck where they are stuck, and they need to figure a way out. Now, in terms of Rashford and Garnacho, I think we're poor. Majority of the game, it seemed like Garnacho's knee was taped up. Maybe picked up a knock. It didn't seem like he was as fast or as agile as he typically would be. I thought his first touch was poor even throughout the game in those key areas, especially. And it showed. So, hopefully Garnacho's able to take a rest. I don't know if he'll get called up or, whether he'll accept the call up right now simply because of that knee. Might take it as an advantage and get the rest and the treatment that he needs. But in terms of Rashford, I just think, he's obviously not getting called up, but I think he needs to one way or another gain his confidence back, because as this drags on, you're not helping yourself in any way, because no team sees you as an asset if you're putting in performances like this. You're not going to get attention from these bigger clubs that you think you can play for and think you can perform for, when, arguably one of the biggest football clubs in the world, at Old Trafford, and you can't put in a performance, or even a half decent performance in a week in, week out basis. So definitely a tough look, but it definitely buys Ten Hag some time to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I did want to point out that we expect Ten Hag to stay here on the job for Man U. It is definitely it's a good result in the sense that it you don't go into the international break in a negative with a negative result, with the sort of the media on your back, and of course even turmoil within the ranks. You get a little bit more of a break. You hopefully have, I believe, Lenny Yoro coming back soon. Mason Mount also doubtful this game, so he didn't play. And so you have some more time for those new players to sort of blend in with your Ugartes, your Xerxes, and even Hodgland, who's just come back from injury. Maybe give him some more time to get back, and hopefully moving forward, this is a much needed break for those players to kick on. And we hope very much sort of what Ten Hag, I think the quote's been out, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you'll see that he needs a little bit of time. Come hopefully the closer to December, they pick up some points, pick up a run of form, and they shoot up the table as we expect them to. Because on the flip side, this was a very much depleted, I would argue, Aston Villa side with Jacob Ramsey, Amadou Onana, John McGinn all missing, and it's of course a disappointment that they didn't get the win, but they did have quite a few big names and players who we expect to start most weeks missing. I think it's ultimately a pretty good result for Aston Villa as well. Disappointed that they didn't get the win, but still getting a point against Manchester United in the Premier League. It's still obviously not a small feat. So I think this is a well-deserved point. We'll see what both teams do sort of with the next international break coming back. And I'm very excited to see how they can kick on after the international break. So let's take a quick break here, guys. We'll be back covering some more of the Premier League action that took place this past weekend. We'll discuss our thoughts then. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue discussing now the title race in the Premier League after 7 weeks. And of course, I'm going to read out the results that took place this past weekend. Liverpool got the win 1-0 away at Crystal Palace, whereas Man City beat Fulham 3-2, and Arsenal won at home against Southampton 3-1. Mac, I'm going to toss it to you first. Pick one of these three games or one of these three title chasing teams, and let us know your thoughts from this past weekend.
So I think it's only natural for me, as the member of this podcast who recently was gifted an Arsenal jersey, to start with the Arsenal team. It just feels like that makes sense. Of course, that result, I think it's what we expected, but it came out in a very unusual way. It was a game where in the first half, Arsenal completely dominated possession. Southampton really never posed a threat whatsoever. And more recently, and going back to Arsenal's most recent fixture against Leicester, against a team just coming up to the Premier League this season, early in the second half, they kind of lose their plot a little bit, kind of get caught on their own foot, where you're expecting them to come out back, guns are blazing, back on the front foot, but they seem like they're still stuck in the second half, and they take a deep breath, and Southampton kind of punched them in the face first. The good part is, in both occasions, that they've gone on to respond immediately right afterwards. I think it was not even 3 minutes had passed, and Kai Havertz had set up a result had tied the game with a clinical finish. I think now, so far this season, he has as many non-penalty goals and assists combined as Erling Haaland. So, he's on a great track record. And going out after the game, Arteta gave him individually a lot of praise, talking about he's the type of player where he needs to be loved and motivated. And just for your Chelsea fans out there, he said he's wants to be able to win the Champions League with Arsenal because it means so much more winning for Arsenal than at Chelsea. So love to hear that. But going on for the rest of the game, after that goal happened, you felt the momentum in the stadium start to pick up, where it felt inevitable that Arsenal would go on and score their second, to which they did through Martinelli, and then, of course, complete the game off on the third. It was a clear level of talent gap that it's been interesting since the beginning of the season without Martin Odegaard, where how are Arsenal going to manufacture these moments, these attacking scenarios where a lot in beginning of the season, they've been relying more so on their defensive structure. I still think this is going to be a very interesting question, because for the first 45 minutes, 50 minutes of the game, they couldn't figure out a way to break through the Southampton team. And again, it's Southampton. They're not going to face this team every week, and they can't rely just on kind of only conceding one or not conceding at all to go on to win the Premier League. They need to figure out, I think, in the final third, a little bit more of a creative flow. This particular team, with the amount of adjustments, like Raheem Sterling came in, Thomas Partey was playing right back. This isn't their best 11 by far, even without Odegaard, but it's something that now after coming from the international break. It's great that they picked up these points against the teams in the positions that they did. But I think that's going to be the question going forward for them still, and they haven't answered it yet. So great result. Love to see certain moments. Love to see the response, but I still don't think they have that one big question that they need to answer if they're going on to stay and potentially lead the title race.
Yeah, just staying on this game quickly before I give you a chance to give us your thoughts, Gio. I do want to give shout out to the star boy, of course, Bukayo Saka, 2 assists and a goal himself. Great performance there. Mac pointed out, of course, there were questions about how and where Arsenal would get some extra offense if Odegaard is out. We know, of course, Bukayo Saka is always going to provide that. With the first assist to Kai Havertz was decent. The second assist, though, to Martinelli was a great ball, which honestly, a little bit of a we do have to sort of question the defense from Southampton there, because Martinelli had so much space at that back post. I was alone at home yesterday afternoon, and it felt like we had the same amount of space in my home, and he did in the opposing box. So great for him to get a goal. Of course, Raheem Sterling was hooked so that Martinelli could come on, and it was a great sort of switch there. I didn't catch the game, so I'm hoping that Raheem Sterling is able to get 2 more minutes and kick on. But that was a great sort of way to get onto the pitch and get a goal for Martinelli to hopefully keep going and making sure that he is also contributing offensively, whereas Bukayo Saka will always get his, and of course he did get his goal in the end. So great shout out to him there. And it really shows they have continued, Arsenal, that is, that mentality where even if they are scored on first, at home and a lot of times even away, they're going to be a team that always bounces back. Sometimes it feels like they kind of need it. I hope that for Arsenal fans' sake, I know it gets frustrating if you're always the team conceding first. You're going to get the win regardless, but I think for Arsenal fans, they would prefer not to concede first a lot of times. But do you have any thoughts on this Arsenal game and any other game that stood out to you this past weekend?
You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I think Bukayo Saka is phenomenal. And like you guys already mentioned, after the tie happened, I thought it was inevitable in terms of like when they were going to get their second. And then obviously Martinelli getting goal is, again, huge for his confidence. You know, everybody's still so on the fence about Martinelli, but, you know, I think for him to just still come out and do his part like he has been doing, I think is fantastic. So shouts out to Martinelli. But I do have a question for everyone. At what cost would Arsenal accept a bid for Bukayo Saka? And this is mainly directed to Mac, because obviously he's going to say absolutely nothing because that would never happen. I think there's always a number. There's always a number that obviously tickles everyone's fancy, and at the end of the day, it is his business. So if Mbappe can get sold, I think.
No, that's different. That's no. That's he wanted to be sold. He wanted to leave. So that I think that's a clear difference. For me, I'll be honest with you. I'll be transparent with you. I don't know if you guys have seen the video where one guy was going around and asking Arsenal fans, is like, you sell Bukayo Saka today, but you win the Premier League, and they're like, no. Every single one of them straight up said, no, not doing it. I think that's the case. He's 23 years old. You realistically, I think for me, I would be more worried about, I don't think he's leaving. I think he's a lifer. I don't think that's the issue. I would be personally, if I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm more worried about if they don't win a Premier League or Champions League, so let's say in the next year or two, what's stopping Real Madrid for coming and asking for Saliba's signature? That's more my issue. I think he's the more susceptible one potentially, because he has played abroad. He is French, probably. I don't know why they always want to play for Real Madrid. Makes no sense to me. Whatever. Wrong country. But I think that's my issue. I don't think there's any situation Saka's going. So they're Gio. Even though you knew I was going to say this, there isn't a number.
Sorry. For Mac, I love how you deflected away from the Saka question and put it onto Saliba, because I do agree. I don't think there is a price that Arsenal would accept for Saka. It's a matter of fact if Saka wants to end his contract himself and or let it expire himself and then make a move himself. I don't think, and at that point, it'll kind of force Arsenal's hand. But I don't see a situation where if Saka wants to stay, there is any team very much like what Barcelona have sort of dubbed Lamine Yamal as sort of the next sort of not heir to Messi, but that sort of special talent that they're going to keep a hold of regardless of what happens, even if it goes to crap. This is the player that they're kind of counting on. So I definitely see the same situation happening to Saka at Arsenal, and it's really up to him what happens next. But we'll see. We'll see what happens from there. Gio, any other result from this weekend that stood out to you as well? I think mainly the Man City and Liverpool results.
I think Man City again. I love to see that Pereira got a goal and then hit the Sui. But I just
and he was called up to Brazil, right? He was called up?
I think he was called up.
He was called up.
He was called up. He was called up because of Fulham sitting sixth on the table. Fantastic. But who would have fucking thought? But the thing about this is, I know we kind of say this every year where Man City always has a slow start, and Prep already prefaced from the very beginning, it's gonna be a slow burner, But are Man City more, are they looking more like a beatable team, and are they looking like a team that isn't gonna get their 5th Premier League title in a row? I think it's very possible. I think this year is the year. If there was ever a doubt, I think this year would be that doubt. Because again, you lost Rodri, extremely crucial to that midfield, but you're banking on KDB to not pick up an injury. You're banking on an aging and not even Barcelona wanting Ilkay Gundogan, albeit that he's done fantastic things for this club. This is what you're banking on in the midfield. You're banking on additionally Kovacic to be and step up to be a goal scorer, or even that person to make that last ditch tackle, or to ping that ball across the field to a Phil Foden whenever Phil Foden decides to turn it on. You're banking on that because you banked on him to score 2 goals this game. If we don't take Kovacic's 2 goals, that's a 1-1 draw. You're banking on him to be that kind of that tipper of that scale. So I think this year is the best year for Arsenal and a quiet Liverpool to kind of sneak in and get that title, and kind of break that Man City streak. I don't know if you guys agree, but do feel free to chime in.
So I do have to agree there, Gio. Even though Kovacic got 2 goals, played a really, really good game, it feels like without Rodri, they are a little bit more open to conceding and not even just conceding goals, conceding chances, whereas Rodri would just eat up so much space and is so good on the ball and knows the game so well that he kind of knows when to step in, when to play a certain type of ball to either relieve pressure or to speed things up. Whereas Kovacic, no discredit to him, great player on any sort of Premier League team, and I would argue as well any team, any European team in the world. He's not at that Rodri level, and so with that sort of X factor missing, I know you also mentioned Kevin De Bruyne missing, could be missing. He is currently missing from the Man City team already with injury. So if he doesn't pick up something else, that's sort of what Man City fans would hope. But absolutely, from this game, very, very susceptible, even because, of course, if our boy Adama Traore had better finishing, it could have actually been a Fulham win. So the fact that it was a 3-2 City win at the end, a little bit flattering to City because they didn't perform, I think, as well as they probably could. But before I toss it to you, I do have to shout out Andres Pereira did get the goal. But of course, who else got the assist but Raul Jimenez with that fantastic back heel. So Mac, I'm gonna toss it to you on that note because I know that you love Raul Jimenez.
I love Raul Jimenez. My favorite player. My favorite Mexican of all time. 100%. No questions asked. Top tier. S tier. But point being, I agree with everything both of you had said. It's interesting to me that we're talking about Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne when the last 2 seasons PFA Player of the Year are still playing for Manchester City, being Phil Foden and Erling Haaland, and they still feel like there's this missing gap. So I think this starts to beg the question of who's actually the best players on Manchester City, and those 2 players that are missing should, for me, clearly still be 1 and 2, even though they may not get as many of the plaudits or the highlights or take many hat-trick balls home at the end of the day. I think a couple questions that we do want to have a conversation about for this team is where Man City against Fulham, they actually lost on expected goals. A lot of that is Adama Traore absolutely destroying Manchester City defense that did not, I think Kyle Walker was subbed onto the field. I don't know if it was to help combat that or maybe he's not ready, because the City question, the problem that they have is they need more players better in possession technically, which causes Rico Lewis to start, but he's not the defender who Kyle Walker is. So now you start to have to play the game of I'm giving something but losing something else, and it's causing other areas in the pitch and the whole kind of domino effect to fall apart where you're losing unexpected goals to Fulham. Again, a lot of it's Adama Traore and it's kind of baked into who he is. Understand that, but still, even if you take away his chances, they're about even. So for me, it is a worrying sign. The benefits them, now it's an international break. So realistically, Kevin De Bruyne is asked to, there's a report coming out that he's asked to take 2 months off from international team commitments so he can kind of rest and heal up. So does that mean he's closer to a return or not? Because they have not kind of really indicated when he's going to come back. I don't know. The only thing we can guarantee is Rodri's out for the season. Kevin De Bruyne is still on the mend, and this team is still already in problems. And as of right now, Pep hasn't found the solution. Will he find the solution? Will this be a similar first half of season kind of bumpy ride before they start to tear people a whole new one at the latter stage of the season? Possibly. But as of right now, we can only grade them what they've done so far, and they have looked shaky and shakier than ever.
Yeah, right there. And then I do agree with what you're saying, Mac. I think Kyle Walker was forced to come on because of that threat in behind by Adama Traore, because Rico Lewis is a fantastic player on the ball, but he is definitely not able to keep up with a player with pure pace like Adama Traore, which automatically made the link to me to what Liverpool have that in Trent Alexander-Arnold, which now I'm going to focus on in our next topic of conversation. Of course, Liverpool did get the win away at Crystal Palace. I think a win to settle the nerves and, of course, go into the international break at the top of the table. But defensively, there are some questions here. Of course, we did have the former Arsenal player Nketiah find the back of the net within a minute of the game starting, but that was ruled offside. And even early on, you can see there are some questions. Andrew Robertson didn't start the game. It was Kostas Tsimikas, who, no disrespect to him, will always be a downgrade to Andrew Robertson. So I know that's been happening more recently, where the fullbacks have been being rotated, and whether that's because that's a tactical thing or just for rest, that's something Arne Slot's going to have to figure out, because of course you can't have that drop in level of performance. And in terms of level of performance dropping, I think we have something very, very big taking place in the next several weeks. Alisson has pulled up with an injury and he's going to be out until, I believe, November. And so that is really bad timing for Liverpool fans like myself, because Mac, I'm going to read out to you the next couple of fixtures for Liverpool in both the Premier League, the Champions League, and of course the EFL Cup. You have Chelsea Liverpool taking out Chelsea right after the international break, then RB Leipzig, Arsenal, Brighton in the EFL Cup, Brighton in the Premier League, Bayer Leverkusen and the Champions League, Aston Villa. Southampton's going to be a hopefully for Liverpool an easier fixture and a routine win, hopefully. And then Real Madrid, Man City, Newcastle before the Everton Merseyside derby. So not an easy run of games for sure. And I think this will make or break the season for Liverpool. just quickly, we'll probably touch on it on our next podcast, Mac. But any initial reactions from the Liverpool result and sort of their upcoming matches in all competitions, Mac?
I think you're correct. Not that necessarily it's going to be make or break, but I think we're going to learn how deep into the title race they're going to be by the end of this run of games. I think if they walk away from, let's say, the next 5 games with, let's say, 13 points, then you're in a position, they're going to be for a long run. But if they walk away, let's say, with 7, then I think you're asking different questions, right? And it's quite plausible for it to go either way. I think you've kind of highlighted the area pitch that I'm most curious about, because I think this Liverpool team in possession will solve enough problems with the players they have up top to create enough opportunities to score goals. And maybe not bundles of goals that they maybe done under previous years under Jurgen Klopp, but enough. The question would be is defensively, and it seems like they believe they have their answer is already solved, that they have it internally, because it looks like Ibrahim Konate is going to get a contract extension. The idea is that still Trent and Van Dijk. The question for me, I think, as you had highlighted out, is the left full back position, where there seems to be, under the last couple of seasons with Jurgen Klopp, due to Andy Robertson injuries, the Tsimikas Robertson kind of conundrum of what you wanted to be able to do with that position. Where Arne Slot has utilized Tsimikas maybe is in some cases more as an fullback in some occasions, where he's kind of tucked in more, whereas Andy Robertson is more that traditional overlapping fullback. Slot has previously focused more on the inverted side, but we'll see. I think that's the area pitch I'm most concerned about. I'm looking at to see how successful either of those players can be under the system, especially with a Kelleher who, even under previous seasons with Klopp, has deputized well for Alisson. Not a world-class goalkeeper by all means, but has done enough. But that back four shape with the defensive midfield in front of them, how good are they? I think that's going to be the bellwether for them through this stretch of games to see how deep or how serious a threat across all competitions they're going to be.
And same question to you, Gio, before we wrap up. Of course, Liverpool currently top of the table with only 2 goals conceded in the Premier League so far. Do you think that will change in the coming 8 weeks? What are your thoughts?
I think it's very possible, because this is really going to show, how much their depth matters. Again, Salah, we know we want to rely on Salah, but how long can we rely on Salah for? Again, in that position, there hasn't been much depth in that position. So, just in general, we see, yes, we put the starting 11 on for Liverpool, and it's competitive across Europe. We get that. It's when you plan for the future and plan for late games where things aren't going as well. Do we have that talent that's next up or ready to go in order to kind of steal you some games? Because not all these games are gonna be a Liverpool dominant games. There are gonna be games where you just need to squeeze one out and kind of run with it. Games that you don't deserve to win, but you still manage to win. Much like this Crystal Palace game where they just were able to squeeze out a win. Could Liverpool have looked better? Absolutely. But did they have the depth going into it? No, I do not think so. And I still don't think so. I still think they are looking to add, because I think Arne Slot has a way he wants to play, and he hasn't been able to bring in all the players that he'd like to, of course. And again, going to what Max said, this 8-game stretch is really going to show how deep they are going to be in it. But again, this 8-game stretch is really going to show Liverpool's lack of depth, and if they want to compete for the title, which I think obviously they do and are in it so far, they're gonna have to look to add, especially in January, if they manage to get out of the stretch. On the positive side, still in that top 3, they're definitely gonna look to add in January.
Okay, finally, Mac.
So, the last thing I wanted to be able to add is where we're questioning them a lot, and the reason why is when you look at who they played thus far this season, that's why we should be asking these questions. The highest placed team right now currently in the table that they faced was Nottingham Forest, who they lost to. So they have had kind of a soft cake start to the season in the Premier League, and they've done what they need to do. They've done their job. Yes, they dropped points in one game, but that happens. I think realistically, this has been a huge positive. I think now is when the tests start, and it'll be interesting to see in the next month, do they stay in this conversation or do they slowly fizzle out?
Yeah, fantastic. So this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well. houseoffooty@hotmail.com is our email. And the next time you hear from us will be next week when we look back at the past 7 match weeks and predict what's to come for the rest of the season. So what we discussed about the title race, we will hear more from us on that the next time out. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
So,
Thank you, Gio.
Take care, folks.
See you guys soon.